possible for you to put these two slides up while I'm talking? Sorry, it's so confusing when I'm doing this, but while the Admiral's putting these two slides, the next two slides up. So that's Viellea over to my left down here on the right, 20 or so miles long, 3.5, 4 miles wide at the widest. This is largely referred to by many as the Forgotten Island. Cecilio, you said yesterday something that struck with me. Disaster-stricken communities become invisible, local expertise non-existent, and institutional and organizational capacities are suddenly forgotten or simply unimportant. I think nowhere did we see that more than on Viellea. But we have a resourceful resident population, a rich culture, important, unique, centuries-long history, but yet used as a bombing and military range for more than 60 years. So as a result, the hurricanes exacerbated many of the factors that already existed there. But the Viellea people, and we have one person who lives on Viellea, Mark. The Viellea people were determined to rise up from the storm even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. Their story is one of stress, fear, struggle, but also resolve, endurance, and resiliency. And largely because the Viellea themselves and a few local NGOs, like Hope Builders, could you go to the next slide? And Viellea Love, who came to Viellea rescue. SUNY and ESF, through Acorns to Action, played a small part, a very small part, but this is a positive, of helping provide on-the-ground staff engagement after the storm and since. And when we talk later, when the Admiral has his last question, I want to give you a little more about that. But let me quote one of our students, who again was very receptive, and the profound impact. So here's the positive, profound impact that our service had on our students. So Devin, it's important to recognize that regardless of where you are, you can make a difference. It's easy to complain about the large organizations for the role they play in relief, but what is more important is that we hold them accountable. Some organizations approach disaster relief with ideas already in mind, but it's up to the community to tell them what the needs are, what the needs of the community are. We have to insist they build a relationship with the community first and not after. The struggles are not over for Viellea, as climate change is only causing storms to increase. We spent a week asking the Viellea community what they needed and getting involved. And while doing so, fell in love with the island and continue to maintain a collaborative relationship in every way we can. I'm just so proud of you. Viellea is a story of civil society stepping up to the plate. Mark literally helped save lives there when there was no response for weeks. And it's a positive story for SUNY's engagement because we've done service there as well. So that's my positive story.
Mark, can I tap one thing on Mark's?
I'm sorry. I meant to say, so what does this mean?
Viellea stands up.
Viellea stands up. Or rises. I'm going with the guy who lives in Viellea. Sorry.
No. I'm just trying to, I think, in terms of the forgotten piece, I think, one of the statistics that we use regularly is about kind of thoughtful giving, and it goes something like this: 60% of the goods that are given after disaster wind up in a landfill, and 75% of the resources that are allocated in the first 6 weeks, and only 5% of those are designated for the long-term recovery, right? Which means that as an organization, as we are moving past the first and second media cycles, and third media cycles, and it's now 6 weeks later, or 6 months later, or a year and a half later, the ability to do work becomes harder and harder and harder because of the lack of resources and lack of attention. So this is something that happens in disasters all over the globe, and it's particularly acute.
And I will add another number. I don't remember the exact percentage, but a big percentage of the goods that come to the place that is affected by disaster go to fulfill the needs of the people who are coming to help the local community. So most of the help and most of the aid doesn't stay in the community. It goes away with the volunteers. So I don't know if it is positive or negative. I'm just
I already did it. I'm the one that's on his bad list.
So I'm just going to throw out there some of the things that we learned, and I have to recognize the presence of Joanne Asensio. Joanne is my brother student from the from University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, and she organized most of the activities that we did together. So kudos to her, like, it was amazing. What brings me to the 2 points that I want to bring. Number one, resources are often taken for granted when we establish inter-university collaborations. And in the case of the University of Puerto Rico, INESI, I'm going to talk on behalf of INESI, I'm not going to talk about the University of Puerto Rico in general. And the second is that the continuity of leadership is also taken for granted. When your cultural context here in the States is different than in the place that you are going to help, university leadership is chosen differently. University leadership, the continuity of the leadership is determined by different factors. In Puerto Rico, it's very correlated to the political party that is in power. So every time a new election comes in and a new government comes in, the new board of regents of the university, new president, new chancellors, new deans, new department chairs, new lady that takes the garbage from the president's office. One thing that I remember from one of our first meetings was that the task force had a very trusting attitude towards formal agreements with the administration. And they said, oh, you guys said, well, we are going to sign an MOU and everything will be fine. And I was like, no, it doesn't work that way, because the people who you are going to sign the MOU right now will not be there in the next 3 or 4 months. So if you want to establish relationships that actually last, and you want to engage with the people who actually do stuff, you need to do faculty or student-led initiatives. And that's what something that we try to engage with the Puerto Rico task force, and that's where Joanna comes in and help organizing some of the activities, like students going to fix roofs of houses, and we have some very funny anecdotes that we can share if we have time. So that's about the leadership, and the resources are taken for granted. Big systems like SUNY and CUNY, it's not a big deal to order a lunch for this amount of people. It's not a big deal. So, assuming that it is as easy and as available in other contexts, it can be misleading. In the case of INESI and the conditions of the University of Puerto Rico, before Maria, we were hit by another hurricane, and it wasn't INMA, it was the Fiscal Control Board. And before the Fiscal Control Board, we were hit by another hurricane that is the political capture of our academic institutions. So resources are not available. Maybe they're there, but they are not available. So I remember one time that Chancellor Johnson came to Calle, and the INESI group and the Puerto Rico Task Force group were installing solar panels in a roof. I remember someone saying, well, maybe the whole group can go and have lunch. And I was thinking, like, well, who's going to pay for it? I cannot pay for it. And even if they had the money, the bureaucratic red tape was going to be so burdensome that it was going to be impossible to access that money. So we ended up not having lunch. I apologize. That in terms of something as simple, in terms of the organizational capacity to pull this off. I remember the first time we met, and you guys said, well, we are bringing 500 cadets, and I almost died. I almost died, because in my head, I was trying to figure out what was the right number of people that we could allocate to different projects, how many communities we we already work with, what kind of projects they could actually engage in, what kind of supervision these students needed, what kind of cultural competencies these students needed, not only to deal with Puerto Rican society, but with other societies within the United States that were trying to help us to work. I remember in some of the projects that the Puerto Rico Task Force coincided with other universities on the field. And, you know, sometimes we don't think about this, but students from New York with students from El Paso, Texas. Gender issues coming to play. Language issues coming to play. Just cultural background issues coming to play. A whole female civil engineering group with a group of cadets that thought that it was really inappropriate to hand in rocks to ladies. And the women in that group were like, what do you mean, ladies? I am an engineer in training, and if I have to carry rods, I will carry rods. That's what I'm here for. So this kind of situation takes so much capacity and resources and lack of sleep if you only have one person or two people to actually engage in this, that is very, very important to take into consideration when we are thinking about scaling this up. Because the Puerto Rico Task Force, I think, was the prototype of RISE, in the sense that it revealed everything that we needed to figure out if we were going to continue doing this in the climate change era. You know, next time it could be you. How would you want us to behave if you were the group in need? Next time it could be Florida. It has been Florida. Next time it could be Minnesota. So these basic understandings and these relationships before the event are so necessary. I came to you or you came to me because we had one person in common. I knew President Rodriguez. He was my professor. So if I weren't related to him in that way, probably we will never find each other, and probably the relationship will not be as productive. So that's something to think about.
Okay, so I'll have to get my thoughts on this question myself. I think our greatest accomplishment, I like to say, you know, restoring communities, restoring hope. The panel I was at just before this one, there was one comment where there's just a twinge of cynicism about, you know, what good does it do to send a bunch of students down to repair roofs? And I don't think that person obviously didn't want to go on a trip because they would have said that. Because what I saw was our students really going into communities that have, like that long felt forgotten, and our students coming in just restored the sense of hope. And I think that was our biggest accomplishment, restoring communities and restoring hope. You know, my students, yeah, okay, so they cleaned up and painted a community center. And someone can be a little cynical, okay, what's the big deal? You clean up and paint a community center. Well, it turns out my students heard the story, and to your point, Marla, heard the story from the community about how important that community center was. That was not a community center. It was where the community gathered for baptisms and weddings and celebrations, and for 8 months they couldn't use it. And because of our effort, they can now use it and restore the sense of community. Building a bridge to connect two communities that have been long separated. So I feel that was our accomplishments. Challenges that I have many, and I think I just want to reiterate what a lot of people have said. First of all, the psychological impacts and concerns on our students. Students are not first responders, and I think all the presidents in the room or camps in the room can say, when a disaster happens, all of a sudden we got the students running to us, you know, when can we go? When can we get down? And what get down right away? And to your point, Ethan, we have no business sending our students in as first responders. They are not psychologically prepared for what they're going to see. You know, our students should be engaged in short-term and long-term recovery efforts only. But even with that, I mean, I think our students saw and experienced more that some of them were prepared for And that's why these debriefs that we did when they came back are so important, to really make sure that we're sensitive to the psychological impacts on our students, both good and bad. And to Marla's point, identifying on-the-ground partners, whether the NGOs or government agencies, because again, you know, we're going to send the traineeship down, and everyone's excited to send the traineeship down, but you know, finding the right partners to work with, and that was our biggest hurdle, was because logistics were taken care of. We knew where they're going to stay, we knew where they're going to sleep, we knew where they're going to eat. But to find the partners was a lot more work, frankly, than I thought it was going to be. And for the later deployments, our biggest challenge was housing and logistics for all the students going down. Again, to your point, you know, they're taking up beds and rooms from other people. So how are we sensitive in making sure we find the housing? That's why we appreciate all hands and hearts and help us with the logistics and the housing. But how do we be sensitive in arranging for all this housing and all of the logistics for without adversely impacting the communities which we're trying to serve?
If I can make a very quick comment. The presence of a lot of volunteers in Puerto Rico had the unintended consequence of inflating hotel prices or Airbnb prices or any other kind of a place to stay. I don't think that prices have gone down after that. People from the outside were so willing to pay so much for accommodations that Puerto Ricans are really now struggling to find an accessible place to stay.
And this gets back to the policy piece of this, because again, you know, our ship was sent down there to provide housing and food for the disaster sponsors to mitigate the impact of local communities. And it was a federal decision to pull. We had two ships down there. We had the Mass Maritime ship and our ship. And between the two of us, we were housing over 1,000 people. Well, the federal government made the decision we're pulling them out, and we're like scratching our heads, like, why now? Like, you know, we were really, well, we thought we should stay there longer, but it's again one of those policy decisions that are made that I think, you know, that need to be revisited. And my last challenge is again, how to sustain how to move from short-term recovery. How do we keep our students involved, not just in short-term recovery, but long-term recovery? You know, it's just again, nature that, you know, obviously, you know, NGOs like All Hands and Hearts, they have to move to other disasters. The state of New York has to move on and look at other disasters. So how do we sustain, how does SUNY as a system sustain efforts in Puerto Rico when both our state government's kind of moving on to the next thing and some of the NGOs down there moving on to the next thing? You know, so now what do we do and how do we sustain our efforts in light of that? I think that's a huge challenge and a huge hurdle, because I don't think any of us want to just feel like we went into Puerto Rico for a few short years and then we left them. We all want to be involved in Puerto Rico in the long term, but how do you do that? How do you sustain that? I think is a huge challenge. So my last question, which goes into tomorrow's theme for the conference, and that's looking forward. So I'm going to ask the panelists, you know, looking forward, you know, please summarize from your perspective, you know, what were some of the lessons learned and best practices from our efforts in Puerto Rico that will really help shape the discussion tomorrow for this conference.
Well, there were a number, but I did 4. Leadership is critical, and what I mean by this is, if you think about Governor Cuomo, we've heard about that, Chancellor Johnson, but also our co-presidents, Adan Rodriguez and Hannibal. I mean, leadership is actually essential, and leadership on the island, certainly. So people with positional and resource allocation power can really make a substantive difference in disaster response and recovery efforts, and I think this model shows that, particularly when we're in the absence of timely, effective, and efficient disaster response from the federal government. Number 2, walk the talk on the two-way street and recoil over cultural relativism. What I mean by that is we were invited to help. That's key. But it was also to learn. And we really talked about that a lot with our students, the importance of that. So sustainable and systemic long-term change happens when people are actively engaged in solving their own problems, rather than having things done for them or external solutions imposed on them by or some solutions which won't even work based on ignorance of the people coming down, parachuting down. Again, in the words of one of our SUNY students, make sure to try to speak with the locals and hear their stories first. Okay, number 3, promoting leadership and active engagement of youth contributes to enduring success. So engaging youth and young adults promotes a strong connection to the local community, helps establish a group of local role models, and fosters critically important informal communication and information networks. That just reminded me of another challenge. I would have liked to have had our students work alongside with more of the UPR students, for instance. I think that's one of the things that would have been very helpful. Number 4, community engagement and service provides hope, as the Admiral said. Pain, fear, despair, and uncertainty was evident in many and was replaced by hope and a renewed faith in humanity as a result of our interactions. I just want to conclude with this quote again from the Rolling Stone. Some of you heard this 2 weeks ago on possible futures for the island. In one version, this is a quote from Rolling Stone, in one version, disaster capitalists and Bitcoin entrepreneurs arriving their yachts and private jets, turning Puerto Rico into a crypto St. Bart's. In another, post-capitalists build a paradise powered by solar microgrids, community gardens, and the rebirth of local fisheries. In a third, the territory, its Commonwealth, falls into dystopian ruin, where everyone with brains and ambition has fled to the mainland, leaving behind an aging, unhealthy population, slow but inexorable decline. One thing that's clear is that in the age of accelerating climate change, what's most vulnerable is not ice sheets and coral reefs. It's our human-built world. As Puerto Rico demonstrates, one big storm can blow the whole thing down. I'm going to put my bet on number 2, the positive vision.
Are you really an optimist?
Yes, I'm trying to be. Resiliency, creativity, drive, and positive outlook is, I think, what I see in the Puerto Ricans, and I think it's really going to be a great future for Puerto Rico. As I told Congress, the residents and visitors of Puerto Rico deserve our focused attention, clean air, and a healthy ecosystem. Puerto Rico has no option but to continue to build resiliency into its vibrant social web and community. And another one of our treasured students who happens to be here today, Cara Fuentes, from Puerto Rico, I think said this great. This is her quote: "People in Puerto Rico are resilient because they have to be resilient. They don't have an option not to be." Can I just have you throw up the last 3 slides? Just so I want to honor them.
They should all be impressed how an Admiral can.
Yes, just no words. Mark taught me this, the importance of silence. Is there a vacancy? Just hold on. Yeah, you can go. Just hold on this. She did not speak English. She spoke broken Spanish. And she's patting, the little girl's patting our student on the head. This was a volleyball game that Mark Viellea organized with middle and high school vacancy girls and us, including me. And we saw the middle schoolers and we were like, yeah, we got this. They cleaned Mark. Right, Mark?
Right.
Oh my God. But yeah, so Devin and Paulina were on this trip. Does this resonate with you? And Kyra as well. This is what it was about when the Admiral talks about hope. Right, Mark?
That is. Many things grew out of that. Out of that game came a fruit tree initiative that was funded and came out of them talking. It was a totally random thing, and it's just an example. A lot of things grow out of this in the hearts and in the action.
Thank you.
All right, who wants to follow Mark?
It's our students. It's all our students. That's what it's about.
Well, I have 5 points I can mention. I have been giving you bits and pieces of it, throughout my remarks, but I think the first one I can think of is to follow the 2-pronged approach that you guys took. The official channels and the unofficial channels. And those 2 parallel lines, maximize the opportunity to actually engage with the people in the field. If one failed, the other was, there. The relationship building part is essential, and those relationships have to be long-term. And relationships are built on people. So and now I know Samantha Venta, your professor, and she's great, and she's beautiful, and she's very sweet, and we're friends now. So next time that something happens, she calls me. She has my cell phone number, and I have her cell phone number. And she has been to my class virtually, and vice versa. Those relationships have to be respectful. You have to valorate the local knowledge. The most recent data suggests that ignoring local knowledge expands the time of recovery for at least 10 years. So universities are focused on local knowledge, so it has to be validated. Those are the people who can tell you what the context is. Historical context, political context, economic context, because all those contexts influencing the ability and the capacity of the university, the local university, to actually engage in relationships. Those relationships have to be just. And that is something that we learned from the PR task force experience, because we had to put into the budget compensating students from INESI to spend time with students from SUNY. We tend to assume that students want to mingle and want to spend time. But in a disaster situation, these kids are actually engaging in their own recovery. They have to work double, triple. If the university they are attending to is pressuring them to come back to the classroom, they have to deal with that too. I have students that, drove 2 hours, with limited gasoline just to go to a Burger King to hook up to the Wi-Fi, because 9 months after the year, they didn't have water or electricity in their apartments. And those relationships have to be equitable. So having money to compensate the time of the local faculty and the local student also give them the sense that their knowledge is valued. If you just take for granted that a community leader is coming to your class and is going to give you a 1-hour lecture about the conditions of the community, and you say, oh, excellent, this is volunteer work, nice to meet you, and here's some coffee, that can create some grievances that the next time you come, that relationship will not be the same. Resources, validating local knowledge, and this is something that we are proposing with the RISE platform, the creation of local observatories. Universities are like a mesonet, this network of radars that monitor the atmosphere and can tell you without leaving blind spots where problems are coming from, basically. Universities can become that mesonet and can monitor vulnerabilities and can keep track of the social vulnerabilities of the communities that surround them. But again, that requires resources. So putting together resources of universities that have them with universities that don't have them is essential to create, the infrastructure, the social infrastructure and the physical infrastructure necessary to engage in this type of collaboration.
Okay, no pressure on panelists. We have about 10 minutes left. I
I'll
told you the time would fly by. I told you.
be quick. So to Mark and the Admiral's points about kind of training and setting expectations, I think one of the things that we've learned over the years is that when individual volunteers sign up to come to one of our programs, whether it's in remote mountain Nepal or whether it's in downtown Houston, by the time they get there, they have a much better sense of what they're going to get into than a group deployment typically will have a sense of. So one of the things that we've learned over the years is to set expectations through pre-deployment phone calls, webinars, and even in person, best case scenarios. So that's kind of thing one. And then thing two, purely logistical. In 2018, we did 1-week deployments, and that was too short. 2 weeks is probably optimal for us and university partners, but better for us is even 3 weeks. It takes a week to get to know what's happening, yourself, communal living, etc. By week number 2, people have actually learned some things about how to do sealant. And by week 3, they are actually training sort of new volunteers. So 3 weeks is a really good time for us. But what Amy and I have kind of figured out, and what I figured out with Sally and other SUNY campuses, is 2 weeks probably makes the most sense as the happy medium, as the pure logistical piece. And then the last piece is that, I talked a little bit about kind of Chancellor Johnson and Governor Cuomo saying, okay, we're going to do this thing. It's going to happen like tomorrow. But the reality is that, academia doesn't move that quickly. And so, to the Admiral's point, to the Admiral's point, we may be in Puerto Rico for 2 years, but that's a rarity, right? And over those 2 years, we may have 4 or 5 different program directors on the ground in Puerto Rico. And so to build an academic partnership in disaster response is really complicated, because disaster response is pivoting every, if you're Team Rubicon, you're in there for 10 days to 30 days, and then you're pivoting to somewhere else. We may be a bit longer, but we're still not there indefinitely. So to build a partnership in Puerto Rico is one thing. To build a partnership with an organization like All Hands is another thing. And I think that is tricky. And I think to go back to your first question, Admiral, about successes, I think the fact that it was forced upon us to some extent so quickly, we moved, and in moving quickly, I started to interact not just with Amy and Sally and Jim and Christian and Peter, but with other folks on other campuses. And over the past 2 years, we've built relationships, not just at SUNY Central, but with SUNY campuses. And I think that's how we get in the bloodstream of SUNY, and that's how SUNY gets in the bloodstream of All Hands, outside of just a personal relationship with me. That's really important.
So just quickly to follow up on that, I think that one of the things that we learned through my institute, I started by saying I had this course called Disaster Practicum, where I was putting students in the local Red Cross or the local county emergency management site. And since the opportunity to deploy to Puerto Rico, and that was mandated, I believe, to be a 4-credit experience. So, but we that created this framework where now I was counting with Ethan earlier, at New Paltz, we've done 5 deployments in the past, not even 2 years, because we figured out now this sort of framework for how to do it using an existing NGO. And academia doesn't usually move that quickly, right? So now we have this sort of pathway for how to create these opportunities. So it's really strengthened the academic offerings that we've been able to do through the minor in a way that I didn't expect. The other thing I want to point out that I said I took social scientists because that's what I understand. But I feel like this